globalization being a primary contradiction. I mean, I think the primary contradiction, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong on this, is usually just considered the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, the working class, and the ruling class. And then you have, like imperialism is a contradiction that sort of stems from that, with the spread of capitalism. So I guess I would say globalization is a product of capital accumulation, and the spread of capitalism. Because once capitalists conquer, the domestic market, their home country, they're going to go abroad, because if you don't constantly make more and more profit, accumulate more and more, you'll be outcompeted by your competitors and you go under. So eventually, as Michael Parenti says, they're going to go abroad and try and super exploit other countries. So I would say globalization, less than being a primary contradiction, it's more a product of capital accumulation and capitalist imperialism.
Right. And
Yeah. Oh,
go
no.
on.
Go. Okay. I'll just be quick. The term globalization has been around a long time.
Yeah.
It was originally the left that was anti-globalism. Back when the tech revolution was really, really kicking off, like the first fruits of it were coming into fruition, everyone was talking about being anti-globalization because capital was going global. So I think what Eddie said is right on the money, that it's not primary. It also, if we talk about globalism, we can tend to obscure the class question,
Right.
which is what this globalization process stems out of, like Eddie was saying. So I think it's really important. Like, I'm never going to word police anyone. If you're talking to someone who talks about globalists, use their language. Go ahead. It's not a huge issue. Talk about globalists, right? Say, oh, yeah, like George Soros and Bill Gates and the Kochs and all of them, right? But slowly make words that imply class synonymous with them for them. So talk about, like, the globalists, the imperialists,
Right.
and go from there. You could even go into establishment. I turn elites into establishment, into the bosses all the time, or capitalists. It doesn't matter. Just always try to
Corporations is a good
focus
one
it
to
on
use.
class.
I've noticed corporations is a good one when you start
Mm.
transitioning. The ruling class, the globalists, the corporations, the
Mhm.
capitalists.
And you cross a river one step at a time, and I think that that's the point, right? In order to get people to accept socialism, who have had their whole life, they've been breastfed the anti-communism that this country has produced. In order to get them to accept it is little by little, and that means getting these ideological elements, as Gramsci would say, and since they're in a worldview that is fragmentary and incoherent, and re-articulating them slowly towards the right position, and that sort of taking globalist to imperialist, and then to this, that sort of strategy, I think, is right on the money. I was gonna try to answer take a quick stab at the globalization being a primary contradiction.
Please
Um,
do.
Real quick,
yeah,
we got a super sticker too.
Thank
So
you, David.
thank you, David.
Appreciate that
David,
as always.
I always like to mention that David was our first ever Patreon. And I remember Eddie and I were super happy because it was like a month into the formation of the Institute. And it was like, someone wants to give us like $3. That's insane. But thank you, David. And so the principal contradiction, you hear a lot of people talk about the principal contradiction is imperialism. And I think that the sentiment behind the people that use that is correct, which is that we need to be anti-imperialist. If the highest stage of capitalism at the moment is imperialism, um, some like Cheng and Fu, for instance, would say it's neo-imperialism, a higher stage of the stage of imperialism. Then the highest form of socialist struggle you can have is struggle that's embedded in anti-imperialist struggle. And I think that's correct. But from a theoretical point of view, there's sort of a contradiction at play here. Because in Mao's On Contradiction, he's very clear about the principal contradiction being capital and labor, because it is the heart of the contradiction in capital, the one out of which all these other contradictions then end up arising from. But if you look at modern Chinese scholarship, and specifically the reflections that have been made about the differences in governance, the different, what Chang and Fu again. I've been reading my Chinese theorists. Sorry, what Chang and Fu calls the partial qualitative changes that have taken place in the continuity of the Chinese Revolution. Um, if you look at how these theorists think about it, if you look at Deng's speeches and Xi Jinping's speeches, they here's the narrative. The initial contradiction was the basic one between the means of production and the relations of production. The focus was on the relations of production, solving that contradiction. Then, during the reform and opening up period in '78, this switches and the focus goes on the aspect of the contradiction between the means and the relations. It goes on the aspect of the means, and that ends up being treated as the principal contradiction. And then now, with the development of the means of production, the emphasis is on common prosperity, on undermining some of the inequality that was created in this process of developing the means of production. Throughout these changes in 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 China's revolution, they've referred to these adjustments in socialist governance as adjustments that are made on the basis of a reassessment of what the principal contradiction is. And so here, I think there might be a tension, because in Mao, the principal contradiction is capital labor, because that's the one that all these other contradictions come out of. And then in other texts in Mao and Deng Xiaoping and in modern Chinese scholarship, they're treating principal contradiction as the basic thing that's the main thing that has to be tackled, right? And I think that a lot of people take that assessment that's grounded on a socialist society that has already resolved its capital labor contradiction on the most part, right? It's not the main contradiction in their socialist construction. And they take that language and they use it in different contexts. In the context of the US, the principal contradiction is capital and labor. The working class is not in power. It does not have the power that the working class in China has to suppress capitalists and to put forward a people-oriented governance. So it's what might appear as a tension there. I don't think it's a tension when you take into account that On Contradiction was written in 1938, might be 37. Yeah, 37, I think.
Yeah, I think it's 37. I
37.
can check, but I'm pretty sure.
Stalin's Dialectic of Historical Materialism is 38.
Exactly.
It was those 2 years were serious, because you also have a pamphlet at that time from J.D. Bernal and one from J.B.S. Haldane. So 37, 38 was 2 very important years. But the point is that that's where one of the first places where he's thinking about principal contradictions, that's where he's talking about it. So China's obviously not socialist yet. The PRC hasn't been founded. It would have to wait another, let me see if my math is up. It would have to wait another 14 years, 13 years.
1949, right?
Yeah. 13 years. It would have to wait another 13 years to
12.
achieve. Fuck you, Noah. I love how he's always talking about, I'm a carpenter, but I'm bad at math. And then he's like, it's 12.
That's like arithmetic and trigonometry, I'm fine with. Everything else, not so much.
The point is, their assessments are grounded on a socialist society. So I think that we should look more to the Mao of 37 when he was fighting a different battle than the stuff that has came out of theorizing from within a proletarian state. So I would say that within the U.S., the principal contradiction is capital and labor still.